Wholesale Hotline. I'm Brent Daniels.
I'm jdamji.
And I'm Jerry Norton.
And I'm Pace Morby.
Every week we bring you the best information on real estate investing.
Be sure to participate in the comments.
And subscribe.
Enjoy the show!
So thank you so much for calling Wholesale Hotline. See you. Wow, that's great.
Welcome to Wholesale Hotline number 262. My name is Brent Daniels, Mr. TTP, Mr. Talk to People, joined by the incredible flipping genius, Jerry Norton. And I am telling you guys this, you need to get out a pad of paper. You need to get out a pen for this show. Jamil, jdamji, Pace Morby will be joining us at the top of the hour. They've got a challenge that they've had on the books for a long time. But I think this is going to be top 5 most important shows we've ever done. Because this is going to give you guys some real insight as to some interesting changes that are brewing, some interesting things that are happening specifically in our market here in Arizona. A indictment came down for a couple super shady people. You guys can look it up. We're not going to get this pulled down by saying any names. Obviously, this is an ongoing lawsuit. But it's been making the rounds. I'm sure it's been posted in wholesaling groups and real estate investing groups, and it's been texted to me and sent to me multiple times. I've had a lot of conversations with title companies and with other investors in town that I really trust, really like. And Jerry's even gone so far as talked to an attorney or two. So with that, Jerry, why don't you kind of crack this thing open? Because there's really 12 main points here, guys. 12 main points of consumer fraud count that happened in real estate that we're going to go over just so that you guys understand and are aware of it. Sometimes we're just not aware of things that are going on in the marketplace, or things that, we never heard of, or things that we might be doing that we shouldn't be doing. So with that, it's going to be an exciting show. It's going to be a little bit more serious of a show, but we'll see how we go with this thing. So it's going to be really, really, really important. And I'll see if we can get people to call in. Jerry, looks like some people want to have some conversation, so we might be able to do that by putting a link in the chat, but we got a lot to go through. So let's get through that and then we can open it up. But Jerry, what the heck is happening out there, brother?
This is a big deal, and it's relevant for each and every one of you listening to this, because this will have a trickle-down effect that will transform our industry, I think. Brent believes the same thing. This will be case law that will be referenced. It will be the poster child of why we need regulated. And there's a lot to learn from this. I mean, this was a full-blown scam operation lasting 10 years, hundreds of homeowners, millions of dollars. But what's great about this lawsuit, Brent, is it's 81 pages. And they literally, I mean, honestly, when I first read the whole thing all the way through, this is the playbook for how to scam homeowners in foreclosure. I mean, if someone wanted to set up a scam operation, they now handed you the playbook, because it outlines everything they did, their conversations, their scripts, how they did it, how they did phantom companies, like the whole thing. It's all now available to anybody that reads that document. So it's just crazy to me. But there are specifically things that they are going after that fall under the Consumer Fraud Act, 12 specific things. And when I read through these, Brent, each and every one of these 12 counts of fraud that they're accusing these defendants of. And again, guys, these are accusations. This is going to go through a lot. This is going to go through court, and it's going to be messy. When I first read this, Brent, I thought this was going to be like super boring, like fall asleep. I was on the edge of my seat reading this, because it's like, what in the world are these guys doing? And then it's like, it's just more and more and more as you're reading through this document. It's just wild. But I see wholesalers on a day-to-day basis crossing into that gray area that these guys are getting busted for every single day, either unknowingly, unwittingly, maybe some people knowingly. But I think it's super important that everybody understands what it is that they're having a massive problem with, even if you're not a full-blown scam operation like these guys were. So I think that's first and
hopefully
foremost.
nobody is in any kind of operation that goes into those areas, but we'll make them really, really, really clear here and really break it down and answer any questions that you guys have, because there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this.
So first of all, Brent, let me summarize what happened as short and as quick as possible. This summary I got from you, Brent. You texted this to me, and then I read through it and I kind of tweaked it a little bit. But basically, here's what was happening, guys. They would knock on pre-foreclosures that had equity. They would lie to the homeowners that they're a charity and that they would catch up the back payments and they would help them stop foreclosure so they could keep their houses. Homeowners would sign extremely biased contracts, even agreeing to transfer the deeds in some cases, of course, at significantly lower values. They called this equity stripping. This entire lawsuit, they reference what they did as equity stripping, which is a fascinating phrase to use. Yep. So they called it equity stripping scheme. Right. And then what they would do is they would create fake bankruptcy and probate filings to delay the foreclosures with the lenders. Then they would cloud title by filing memorandums. They would put liens on. In some cases, they would, like I said, transfer the deed to a new company. They'd get title insurance. If the homeowners refused to go forward, these defendants, their lawyers would step in. They would file lawsuits forcing the sale and getting default judgments. Then they would evict the homeowners, flip the properties at fair market value, and profit millions of dollars. And this, again, was going on for 10 years as a scam operation. So that's the summary.
Yeah.
Did I hit it pretty good, Brent? Does that cover it pretty good?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's also, you know, we've talked, and I've talked the last couple of years about groups out there that go out and they market to sellers, and to get a great ROI on their marketing, Jerry, they make sure that every lead that comes across, they're going to get paid on. And the best way to do that is give the seller whatever they want. Give them whatever price they want, whatever terms they want, put it under contract, and then file a memorandum against that property to cloud title, disappear from the seller's lives, and wait till a real buyer comes around and try to shake them down for $10,000-$15,000 to release that memorandum, that cloud on title. Yeah. And that's how they were funding. And this isn't just this group. I mean, this is something that unfortunately has been a problem here in Phoenix. And it's interesting, Jerry, you know, it got to the point with these guys and similar groups where we would put a property out. This was a couple years ago, and it kind of died down over the last couple years. I feel we would put a property out, a property we have under contract. We'd put it out to our cash buyers. Somehow they'd sneak onto the list, or somebody would send it to them, or they would be on somebody else's list. And these deals circulate, right? Whether we have it very private or not, somehow it slips out. They would hire people from Craigslist to go out to, and I don't know if it's this group or other groups, but it's just people in our marketplace would go out there and knock on the door of the property owner and say, hey, we can give you so much more for your property, lock it up. The first couple, we were like, you know what? We're not going to fight them. If they want to cancel and they don't want to do business with us, great, not a problem. No, you know, we're out of here, hands clean, you know. And what would happen is, we'd talk, those sellers would call us and say, hey, we went with that other offer. And then the day we're supposed to close, they demanded that we reduce the price $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, something ridiculous. The day that they moved out, they had done all these things. And all of a sudden we're getting these calls saying, these people were just scamming us, essentially. And so it's like, it really affected the way that we sold our deals. We started closing on more deals, Jerry, like you said, because like you talk about with the takedown method, and just to help protect our.
Let's talk about that one first. The first count that they're being accused of, that they're being accused of, falls under Consumer Fraud Act, is the affidavits. And guys, I get it. You know, I used to file affidavits. No one likes getting backdoored. No one likes the seller negotiating a new contract with a different wholesaler. They close out from under you, or your buyer goes around you and backdoors you. Nobody likes that. But guys, we're in different times today. they're going after hard these memorandums. And here's the bottom line. If you go in front of a court and you're an investor and you cloud title on somebody and you don't let that seller sell that property, no matter what story you have, you are the bad guy, and you're going to be the bad guy every single time. You are not going to win that, especially if it's a foreclosure, especially if they're in distress, especially if they're elderly. Like, you are going to lose that one. I kind of have a new policy, Brent. Like, just no more. If a seller wants to back out of a contract, let them go. Yeah. There's more deals to go after. Let them go. It's not worth it.
And I get it. It hurts, but it is. Listen, everything times zero is zero. Okay. Like, you got to pay your taxes. You got to not lie to sellers. You got to be transparent. You got to do what's best for the property owner and really take that to heart, or everything times zero is zero. These guys have been doing this for a long time. They're not going to be the only ones that get rolled up. Guess what, Jerry? They're not going after them criminally. They're going after them civilly. They're going to take all their money and properties.
Yeah, this is a civil case, so this isn't a jail thing. The second one, Brent, let's go into number 2.
Why isn't it? Why do you think, Jerry? I mean, we're not attorneys. We're not attorneys, guys. We're not attorneys. Disclaimer.
I mean, honestly,
why not go criminally?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think that the bigger picture here is they're trying to create precedents to now pass laws that will be detrimental to our industry. I think this is just a big setup for that. And you could tell by the language and the things they're going after what the intent is. I mean, this is a progressive AG with Arizona, so they're, this whole like this here's where this is just way off. Now I know this was a scam, but when you call buying a property at a discount equity stripping, that is so far off base. The idea there is that we have sellers that are unconsenting, that don't understand what they're doing, that are giving away their hard-earned equity. This is nonsense. I have never once been involved in a transaction where the seller wasn't willing and knowing, and they didn't understand that they could hire an agent. They didn't understand how to look up value on Zillow. Like, it's nonsense. We're not stripping equity. Somebody willingly is selling at a discount for the speed and convenience of a cash offer. So it's just nonsense to call any of this equity stripping. I mean, that tells you everything right there about what they're doing.
Well, the other side is
defrauding and lying and cheating and stealing and faking bankruptcy. I mean, that's all, of course, that's all scamming. But equity theft is a made-up thing.
Yeah. Well, fair market value, who determines it?
Right, 2 consenting parties.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. The other part was that they said that the purchase agreement is not enforceable. It's actually not valid.
We're going to get to that.
Okay. I won't skip ahead.
That's one of them. Yeah. We'll get to that one. The second one, though, Brent, is around recruiting, how they recruited door knockers and their salespeople, their drivers. And, guys, you got to remember, if there's a lot of issues between a W-2 employee and a 1099 contractor, and I think we're all guilty of this. This is a gut check everybody needs to do. If you're telling somebody how much they're going to earn, when they punch in, when they punch out, exactly what they're doing, and it's fairly consistent, that is a W-2. You better have them as an employee, not a 1099. You're going to get in trouble for that, and they're going to unwind that, and you're going to owe a lot of self-employment tax and everything else if you're doing that, right? So everyone needs to be very aware of the difference between W-2 and 1099. Okay, so that's one. Okay, the third one is this fraudulent one. And this one, Brent, is really important for everyone to understand. This is around being deceptive, false pretense, false promises, misrepresentations. And they use the word a lot, intent. Now, here's something that I've seen in our industry. This is what people would say to me. They'll say, hey, I understand that they passed a law in South Carolina or Illinois or wherever, but how are they going to know that I'm a wholesaler? When I sign the contract, I'm just going to say that I was going to be the buyer, and then I changed my mind later and wholesaled it. I'm off the hook. No, you're not off the hook, because you have to show that you have the ability to close. Do you have the funding? Do you have the backing? Do you have a history of closing deals? If all you've done is assignments You cannot say that I buy properties. You can't say that. You can't say that my intent was to purchase the property if you don't have a history of doing that. Intent is based on, they base intent off your previous behavior and your ability to perform. That's what they base intent off of, not what you thought you were going to do. Okay, this is something everybody thinks they can just do, and it's not going to work.
What about transactional funding?
Okay, so if you're double closing and you're using transactional funding, they're going to look at that as its own type of thing, right? So I did buy it. I used a special type of financing. I turned around and resold it the next minute. But do you have a history of that? Are you being transparent about what you're doing? Like, that's the whole thing. And there's more on transparency in this whole thing. But like, I think that's a gray area. I think a double close is not the same as I'm going to buy it and own it, because what you're doing is you're pre-selling it to a buyer on a property you don't yet own. That's a double close. And so that's going to continue to get challenged. And I think we're going to see a lot of stuff come out around double closings too.
I love it. So what's the suggestion, Jerry? If you don't have the money, but you have, let's say that you have talked to hard money lenders, you have some buyers that are ready to buy your properties, you find a good deal, you can get transactional funding 100%. Do you go in as the buyer, or are you saying, hey, listen, I am a wholesale buyer until you get to the point where you are closing deals? Because that'll fundamentally shift everybody, like when they're starting out for their first 6 months, year, unless they've already built up some wealth and have the money to be able to do it.
I think you're right, Brent. I think you should be double closing 25% of your deals, just because you can start to show a history of buying property, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know you're reselling it right away and all of that. It's not the best way to show a history, but it's better than straight assignments. If all you do is assignments, you cannot say sometimes we buy the property when you don't sometimes buy the property. So like, one of the big things they're getting these guys for, Brent, is they would go in as foreclosure specialist, and we'll talk about that one. That's one of the things on here. They would say to the seller, look, our goal is to save you from foreclosure so you can keep your house. But they didn't ever do that. They always tried to take the house. So you're saying one thing, but you're doing another. That is fraud. They're going to try to get you for fraud. Anybody's going to try to get you for fraud, because you're saying one thing, but you're doing another, and that's dishonest.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, guys. These guys have been in a lot of courts. These guys have had a lot of complaints. This has been sitting on the Attorney General's office for a while. If you read the indictment, somebody was definitely working with them as a secret agent.
Oh yeah, they got some dirt.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. But fundamentally, guys, truth teller, truth seeker, right? If you haven't set up the financing, if you don't have a money partner, if you haven't had the conversations with that's what happened with me, Jerry. So I was just going as an agent representing my buyers until I talked to Chris Iman. Chris Iman goes, listen, I'll give you 100% finance. I'll give you 100% on any of the deals that you find, as long as they're good deals. And I was like, seriously? And he's like, yeah, 100%. And I was like, so I'm a cash buyer. He's like, you're a cash buyer. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go as a cash buyer because there's way more money than there is deals. So how do we make sure that, one, we have the confidence that we're doing the right thing, but two, we actually have the financing to set up? What are our options there, Jerry? Because I think this third point of intent is really huge. And this is, guys, this was a conversation that Steve Trang had 4 years ago on YouTube with an attorney talking about if you don't have the means to purchase the property, it's fraud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's it for. So what do? You've got to make some adjustments in how you're talking to sellers, what you're having them sign in writing. I mean, the fourth one is omissions. So they're calling it omissions under the Fraud Act. And what they mean there is not disclosing that you might wholesale the property. So guys, every single one of you need to have documentation in your contracts that explains what wholesaling is. And you need to be having these conversations with sellers and making it crystal clear to them that you might sell your contract for a profit. And so I think what happens, Brent, is a lot of wholesalers are afraid to do that. They worry that if the seller finds out that they're wholesaling, that they won't want to do the deal. I found the complete opposite. If you're totally transparent with a seller, they're going to respect you for being honest. I've never lost deals by telling a seller that I might sell it to another person. I've never had that happen to me. But yet everyone's like not disclosing that they're wholesaling.
In Arizona, you have to disclose.
You have to. That's part of why they're going after them, because in Arizona, and they weren't disclosing that they're wholesaling.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what?
In 2023, 25 of their deals were assignments, and they did not disclose that they were signing contracts.
120 memorandums on properties.
Yeah, that they got them for.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's number 4 is omissions, which is not disclosing that you're wholesaling. Number 5 here.
Let's stay on this real quick, Jerry, because I think this is really important. So, do you go to a meetup and find somebody that has the funds and work on their team and work with them and be that represent them as that? Do you go and talk to the hard money lenders and see what their terms are for purchasing these properties, get a proof of funds, do all that type of thing? You've had proof of funds for a long time, and for transactional funding, is that something that you roll back a little bit and you go, I'll give it, based on certain criteria? Is something that you've always based it on criteria of giving proof of funds? You know what I mean? Like, how can we be cash buyers? Or if we're not going to do any of those things, guys, you could still go and disclose that you're not the buyer. You're not going to buy this property, but you've got people that will, and you need the agreement signed so that you can go out there and find those people to buy the house. You would be shocked how many sellers are fine with that. You know what I mean? Like, and some won't be. Some will be like, no, I need to talk to the actual buyer myself. Right.
Yeah.
But
if there's a remote chance you might assign your contract, you've got to have this conversation and you've got to have this verbiage in your contract. So I always have it, and I always have the conversation, even if my plan A is to buy it and fix and flip it, or buy it and keep it as a rental, or take it down or whatever, because I want to have all my options open to me. And if someone comes along and offers me, a great assignment fee and I can just do an assignment, I want that ability. What I don't want to do, though, is ever put myself in a situation where the seller was thinking one thing and something else is happening. I mean, imagine if that's your grandma or somebody and they don't understand fully what they're getting into. That's not okay. Just ask yourself, if this was my grandma right now, would I be okay with this? Would I have a problem with this? Or if you were on the other side of the table and you didn't really know what was going on and they were telling you one thing but doing another, would you have a problem with that? I think most people would, right? So that's the thing you got to be thinking about. This number 5, Brent, is a big one. This is what they're calling void contracts. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a couple attorneys about this one, and they said this one is going to be a hard one for them to win. But the argument they're making is they're saying that because their contracts were so one-sided, they lacked mutuality of obligation. And what this means is it means now it's not legally binding because it was not a mutual relationship of, you're giving, I'm getting. Like, there's not a fair exchange of something happening here because it was so biased in the wholesaler's favor. So what are those things? Weasel clauses, ability to back out of contracts for any reason. They had in their contracts, Brent, language that said at any time, buyer has the right to cancel the contract for any reason. But then it said, but seller is not allowed to back out of the contract for any reason whatsoever.
And the buyer gets their earnest money back.
And the buyer gets their earnest money back. And they were doing zero earnest monies, right? And so what they were doing is they were creating these contracts that were so one-sided that now the Attorney General of Arizona is saying these contracts are not even binding contracts. We're throwing them all out. Mm-hmm. So guys,
listen, since 2004, you go through, I went through the real estate school, and it's been, told to me a bazillion times. If you're representing a seller and your seller accepts a purchase agreement, they can't just cancel the agreement. There's no 3-day rescission window here in Arizona. Some states have that. There's no cancel for whatever reason. It looks like Oregon might be in a position where you could cancel for whatever reason. I'd have to look into that a little bit more. But Jerry, maybe somebody put that up in the comments before. But in Arizona, to us and to most states, I believe, when a seller accepts a purchase agreement, and now the buyer's doing the buyer has the contingencies. The buyer has an inspection contingency,
financing,
a loan contingency, they have an appraisal contingency, they have the right to review all the seller property disclosure statements that the seller gives. All of these things they can get out of the contract once it's a binding agreement. The seller, on the other hand, can't go, oh, I just got a higher offer after we just accepted this. See you later, buyer. I'm going to take this one. Okay. And so that's what Jerry's talking about. Essentially, like, these contracts are set up, for the buyers to be able to get out of the agreements based on them doing the due diligence that's required to make sure that they want to move forward with it. Yeah. A seller just canceling because they got a higher offer would make the real estate industry crazy. It would just go absolutely bananas. So there's got to be a reason why. Contract law.
It's got to be. So on the buyer side, on your side, us as investors, it's just got to be fair. So for example, I use inspection contingencies all the time, but it needs to be 5 days, 7 days, maybe 10 days. You can't have an inspection contingency that goes all the way to closing. It's unfair for you to ask for that much time, especially if you start to show a history of backing out of contracts. What they're going to do, Brent, if they ever put somebody under a microscope, they're going to say, how many contracts did you sign? And how many did you back out of for no other reason than you couldn't find a buyer for your deal and you don't have legitimate cause to back out just because your contract says you can't? That's what they're upset about.
Right. Guys, listen, they're going to throw a bunch of stuff in there. Some things will stick, some things won't. We'll see how it shakes out. It'll be a while. I'm sure that the guys are involved in this. The people involved with this are going to lawyer up as much as possible and try to figure out what's going on. But there you go. Kiave. This is interesting. Home investors just added a 3-day right of rescission for sellers for that exact reason. I was worried at first, but it's been a huge selling point. It's fantastic. Yeah. Not only that, but listen, Home Investors was under the gun a couple of years ago, under the microscope a couple of years ago for some bad actors. And so they made some adjustments and added more things to their process. So there you go.
The next couple of them, Brent, I can lump these together. These were all related to pre-foreclosure. You guys that are doing door knocking, pre-foreclosures, you got to be really, really careful. You cannot claim to be a foreclosure consultant. You can't do a bunch of unauthorized practicing law, which is advising homeowners to do bankruptcy or any of that kind of stuff. You can't do, they call it financial exploitation, where you're getting bank statements, you're getting their loan documents, you're getting their social security numbers. I mean, guys, all of that is going to be, they're going to nail you if you're doing any of that type of stuff. You got to be really, really careful. You need to advise those people to seek other counsel. You shouldn't be giving them advice, anything. You're talking about people that are in, first of all, they're in foreclosure, so they're compromised. And then usually there's a job loss, there's an illness, there's some other layer of complication going on. These are people that really aren't thinking super clear, about these decisions. And so you cannot be giving them advice on how to handle these financial situations, or you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah. And listen, this should be common sense. I mean, I always, in the back of my head, I always think, or I guess it's here. I always think about Tom Kroll, and Tom Kroll's like, if you're not an attorney, stop acting like one. Ever. And he gave me that advice as a coach and a teacher and that type of thing. But also, when you're with property owners or investors that you're working with, if you're not an attorney, knock it off. Find an attorney. Find an attorney that can answer questions. Find services that actually do it, that are outside. What we do is we find amazing opportunities, and we go out there and we try to find some properties that need significant investment and turn those into properties that people can live in long term. That's what we do. Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, that is what we do. We take these properties that are all beat up and look horrible, and they're vacant or fire damaged or just super, super dated. And if the price is right to take the risk, you go in and you negotiate that deal.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We're not attorneys. We're not working for the bank. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And Brent, I think,
But what do you think about this, Jerry, real quick, while I'm on the story? What happens if you have a purchase agreement on that and you want to try to get the foreclosure postponed so that foreclosure, this is another thing we got to get into, this whole foreclosure thing, because it always seems to be the thing that they look at the most, but preventing the foreclosure so that they can sell the property. That's
what Espinoza got busted for just recently, doing that type of thing. That's
right,
what these guys were doing. These guys were falsifying documents
with them. If you have a legitimate purchase agreement to go get that foreclosure postponed, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's just if it's looked under a microscope, can you with a clear conscience explain and show what you're doing, and it's totally above board and it's totally legit? If you're doing anything that's sort of like, oh, let's kind of make up a contract so we can postpone foreclosure, it's in the best interest of the seller. Don't do it. That's not going to work.
No,
that's what we've seen a lot of stuff happening doing that. Yeah. I think the other one here, Brent, is like they went after racketeering, forgery, illegally conducting an enterprise. That's all the scam part of what they were doing. But there's one here that number 12, they called it alter ego. And what they were doing is they were setting up multiple phantom entities, LLCs. And so I asked a couple attorneys about this, and they said, look, I do this a lot. I'm guilty of this, where I set up entities for every property I buy, and I'm doing a bunch of asset protection and all that, right? Sounds good, makes sense. Here's the problem. If that entity is going in front of the public, so if you're saying, hey, I'm Brent Daniels Saves Your House LLC, but it doesn't have its own EIN number, it doesn't have its own bank account, it doesn't have its own books, it doesn't have its own history of operations. If it's not an entity that's an operational entity, you cannot use it in that way. Otherwise, it's trickery. You're just using the name, but it's a flow through to something else. And that's what these guys did quite a bit of. And so, don't do that. If you're gonna set up an entity and you're gonna use it to transact, it better be a legit company that's operating.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And listen, if you're going out there, like the way that they were doing it, posing as a charity that did no charitable work, that's going to cause problems. It's going to cause problems. You know what I mean? And so, this is wild, but it is going to have ripple effects throughout our industry, throughout everything.
I think a couple of big things. I did a YouTube video about this a couple of weeks ago because I followed this chat, Brent, on Facebook, and somebody said, hey, what do I do when the seller gives me pushback about no earnest money or $10 earnest money or $100 earnest money? And there were hundreds of comments, and most of them, 75% of them were, we'll say it like this, explain to the seller this and that. And there were prominent people in our industry, educators, that were saying, earnest money's not even a thing. That's made up. You don't need earnest money. And I'm like blown away. Guys, earnest money is a real thing. It's the insurance policy to the seller. And here's how we prove this. Here's what wholesalers do, Brent. They want to sign a contract with a seller with a $10 earnest money with contingencies all the way to closing. But then on the flip side, when we assign our contract to a buyer, what do we teach everybody? What do we do? I want a non-refundable, sizable $5,000 non-refundable earnest money. Why? Because I don't want a flaky buyer who doesn't come through on the deal. That's a double standard. You can't tell your cash buyer non-refundable $5,000 earnest money on one hand, when you, on the other hand, don't want to pay any earnest money and you want to have a loosey-goosey contract all the way to closing that you can back out of for any reason whatsoever. It's a double standard. It's a hypocrisy. Guys, you have to start putting down earnest money.
Yep.
You got to. It's going to legitimize your contract. I would love to just do $10 earnest monies too. Who wouldn't?
Right? And be an actual buyer. or just disclose that you are going to wholesale it. It's all about what are you saying to the property owner? Are you lying to them or are you telling them the truth? That's all they look at.
Yep.
That's all they look at. That's what people that's the judge. Did you lie or not lie? You know what I mean?
Now here's where here's where this is scary, Brent. They pulled in title companies and attorneys. Now, I talked to Jeff Watson about this, and he said, in his opinion, that was a huge mistake for Arizona, because those title companies and those lawyers are clearly going to be well represented.
Yep.
And I mean, they're gonna fight back on this real hard. Some of them have, that I read through, they have great reputations, and they're getting pulled into this. I think some of them weren't aware of what was going on, and they're getting pulled into this lawsuit just because they were involved in the transaction. I think that was a mistake. But here's what's scary about this. When you start including the title company, when there's a fraudulent transaction that's happening, now title companies and closing attorneys and everybody involved in real estate, they're all going to put the brakes on now. They're all going to squeeze and tighten up everything they're doing. We're going to have title companies now reviewing contracts.
Yep.
That's not their job, right? So, because they don't want to get sued. So we're going to see a massive shift now in, I think, title companies that are going to just say, you know what, these assignments of contract, they're not worth the headache. There's case law. There's a lot of negativity around them. There's lawsuits out there. There's states that are passing laws. I want nothing to do with this. And I think we're going to see the assignment of contract just get harder and harder because title companies and closing attorneys don't want to get dragged into these lawsuits.
Let me ask you this, Jerry. In your opinion, if they take assignments completely off the board, does the amount of transactions go significantly down?
Well, ultimately, when you limit
competition,
competition,
find another way.
Yeah, people will find another way, but it will create a constriction in the market, especially temporarily. And whenever there's lower competition, the one that gets hurt the most is sellers. Because if I'm the only one in town that has the money to buy the house and all the fly-by-night virtual wholesalers are gone, then I'm going to get a better deal.
Yep.
The best thing that you can have in the market is a lot of wholesalers. It drives prices up, keeps competition, keeps prices fair, right? You do not want to take that away. So when they pass these laws, all they're doing is they're hurting the very person they think they're helping. The seller is who they're ultimately hurting. But guys, there is nothing you could do smarter than in one of these states that passed regulation to set up a real estate company. Go get yourself some funding, go into that market, and you're going to kill it. The wholesalers that are in South Carolina are killing it because they have much less competition now.
Well, not wholesaling, but flipping.
Not wholesaling, but transacting, buying.
Yeah.
Buying and selling.
Yep. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. You know, I had that. That's why I talked to the title company, because it's not like regulations. Fantastic. You need a real estate license. Great. You need to disclose. Great. You need to put this type of language in your purchase agreement. Great. The only thing that's going to kill assignments are title companies not doing them.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Close. The only thing that's going to stop double closes, double escrow, assignments, novations, you can throw them all in the mix.
Yeah.
Are going to be the title companies. Yeah. And I am telling you guys, I saw this happen with short sales. I saw this when people were trying to assign short sales back in the day. And the government really didn't like that. And the title companies were like, nope, we're shutting it all down instantly, immediately. Boom, done. Right.
Yeah.
And then it's like the hedge funds. It's like when the hedge funds turn off. You know what I mean? The hedge funds, interest rates go up a little bit in 2022. Hedge funds go, oh, sorry, all 50,000 transactions we have going out right now between all of us hedge funds are done. And then it's done. Just like that. Overnight. Yeah. Overnight. So guys, this isn't something that's like, this is the hammer's coming down and all this and that. None of the title companies will do it. I'm just saying, if you're not building up your business so that you have another alternative, whether it is full disclosure, whether it is getting money backing you to be able to do these transactions and do a takedown method. If it's, figuring out what to do if all of a sudden they don't allow novations, you got to have something. You got to keep your ears to the ground and listen for these things, but you got to have another option. And I keep rattling my brain around it, Jerry. And I think the only option is you got to buy them. You got to raise funds and you got to close on deals. And the people that do that long term are going to get the biggest, best deals. I don't think it's going to happen over, in the next 12 months, 24 months, 36, who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm just telling you, if there are more, because this is just Arizona, this is just this market here. This is happening everywhere. I guarantee you there's some shenanigans. And
if you don't think there's other attorney generals watching this closely, you're nuts. I mean, nuts. And everybody else, right? Everyone's watching this. This is now, when something like this happens, it's for a reason. They're trying to set the stage for coming down on stuff like this. So guys, here's what I look at, Brent. Where it's allowed, I want the ability to do the assignment. It's the best strategy in the world. I mean, it's saved me from poverty. It's changed lives. It's allowed millions of sellers to get what they wanted, and entrepreneurs like you and me and everybody else to build a business from almost nothing. It's been the most incredible opportunity of a lifetime. So if you're going to do it on the up and up. Go the extra mile. Go above and beyond. Don't just like, hey, I want to be slightly on the right side of this. Go way above and beyond. You'll actually beat out all your competition because you'll be doing all the right things. You'll be able to sit down with a seller and show them, hey, here's how I'm different. I actually do the right thing. Let me show you a history of transactions I've actually done, right? And so do the right thing. And then also, second thing is, like Brent just said, see the writing on the wall. You guys are nuts. And I've been preaching this, and Brent has, and we've been talking about this for years. The writing's on the wall. You better get yourself capitalized. You better get funding behind you if you're going to stay relevant in the future in this business. And I, for one, want to stay relevant. I want to keep doing deals for a long time, hopefully. So I'm bringing this awareness, and Brent, you're willing to bring this awareness to people so that we can all rise up, see what's happening, be able to pivot. Everyone needs to be able to pivot. To me, this is nothing more than pivoting. Like Brent, you did $2.5 million in assignment fees last year. You're not one bit worried because you're able to pivot and make the changes you need to so that your business can flourish and be successful. And that's what everybody should be doing. I hope I don't see one comment that says, oh, great, I just got started. Now this looks like this ain't going to work. What are you talking about? Just figure out what the next thing is to do right and do that. That's all.
And by the way, I think some departments of real estate heads, I think attorneys, I think title companies will fight to keep assignments on some level. I really do. Because if you really look at it, if we all have to go and close every single time, guess what the seller gets less of?
Yep, less money. Yeah.
Less money every time.
You got to account for all the extra fees.
You got to build it in. You got to build it into the cost of doing business. Because the fact is, there's a certain segment in real estate that are really good at marketing and talking to these property owners and seeing what's going on. And believe it or not, and this is a shocking revelation that I had, that other people have that have been in this industry a long time. There are a tremendous amount of sellers that hate realtors. They hate the idea of their home being displayed to the world on the internet. They're private. They're ashamed. They just want it to be done instantly. They're embarrassed. All of these things. That's what people don't want to wait. You can't just go, hey, listen, we're going to force you, seller, to get a realtor and to pay commissions and to put it on the internets and the interwebs, and you're gonna get the most.
You're gonna do showings,
and if the market changes, it doesn't matter because fair market value is what the government determines it is. Like what are we talking about? I really think that assignments are something that title companies really want to keep doing. But it is an interesting question. If you could not do assignments, just as a thought exercise, would there be less transactions? Would there be would there be a disruption in the marketplace that was significant, not only with title companies going out of business that specialize in it, or escrow and escrow officers and title officers, well, escrow officers and closing attorneys and all these other things that this is their specialty.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they'll adjust, but
it's proven that when you raise the minimum wage, the extra cost is passed on to the consumer, right? So,
yeah,
that's all that's going to happen here.
Like Louis here says, so no more small fish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no more $3,000 assignments. You can't. You got to have margin.
It's like you have to add, you have to raise all the funds, and you can't just get into this. And the barriers to entry are going to be so much higher. So all the guys that are established, like you and me, Jerry, we just hoover up all the market share. It's awesome. We should be quiet about this, Jerry. We're going to make so much more money if we were quiet about this. Because believe it or not, guys, we're actually operators. We actually do this on a daily basis. This is something that we are knee deep in. And I keep coming back to it, Jerry. And I keep coming back that, like, long term, you got to take these properties down. And we've been doing it. You said, how much we made on assignments, but that's a combination of assignments and flips and getting realtor referrals and some of these other things from the commissions that we refer those deals over, and novations on some level. So we've got a lot of different tools in the toolbox. But the assignment is one of the lowest risk, best vehicle ever. And we disclose it and we explain it and we go through the purchase agreement and we don't get complaints. And I think it's just because we actually go through the purchase agreement. So my advice to everybody is make sure that you are actually going through the purchase agreement with your sellers.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially on these points here. So yeah. And again, that's why, like, I'm working on 100% fund. We've got a pilot program right now. You guys reach out to me if you've got a deal. It's got to be a deal, though. We're not going to fund something skinny 100%. It better have margin so that there's room for you to resell it, pay fees, and make profit. But, like, I think it's going to be important that everybody's got their eye on that, and they're thinking, in business, you always want to be one step ahead. And this is how you stay one step ahead, is just be aware and start planning for it, start closing some of your transactions. And you're just going to set the groundwork and have a really solid foundation for a good business.
The other thing that I thought was interesting, Jerry, was they're arguing in this indictment that if the properties go to foreclosure, the excess funds would go to the seller and they would make more if they didn't do business with these guys. Obviously, there was what they call equity stripping there, where they went in and under false pretenses. Allegedly. Everything is alleged.
Everything's right? Allegedly. Yeah.
Alleged. We're telling them things that allegedly were not truthful and swindled their equity.
Yeah.
And that's gross. You know what I mean? But the fact I was thinking about this, Jerry. What is the financial detriment? I wonder if there's ever been a study that goes, if you go through a foreclosure and you have that on your credit for 7 years, how does that affect you financially moving forward when it comes to getting anything? You know what I mean? Like, they check your credit to get cell service on some, carriers. They check your credit to apply for jobs. They check your credit to on all the usual things, obviously. They check your credit to get a bank account.
Yeah.
I couldn't even get a bank account when I foreclosed back in the day because my credit was so bad. They didn't trust me to not overdraft my checking account. All the major banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, after all the other small banks consolidated into those three, essentially, and some other ones, but at least here in Arizona, couldn't get a checking account.
I would love, Brent, to hear from our audience, like, what changes are you guys making? What are you going to do starting right this minute to be more on the disclosure side, more on the up and up? What adjustments are you going to make, if any? Maybe you're like, I don't care, catch me if you can. Guys, by the way, you can break the law, you can rob a bank and not get caught. but that doesn't make it okay, right?
Yeah.
So if they're passing laws in your state that you don't agree with, you're not an anarchist, right? Where you can just be like, well, I don't care. I don't want to do it. You got to do it. There's proper channels to fight some of this stuff, but don't ever think that just because you don't agree with it means you don't have to do it.
Yep.
That's going to get you in a lot of trouble.
It's really interesting. Glenn brings up a great comment here. You put in the time and money and they bounce at the end because a scammer offered more. ? And I think that this is really interesting because we have these conversations on a daily basis, Jerry. When we're going in up against, we explain what will happen once they sign a purchase agreement with somebody. And there's some that are just so obvious, Jerry. I mean, people coming in 50,000, 80,000, 100,000 more than our offer. We're like, come on. This is obviously an attempt to just get a purchase agreement signed so you can file a memorandum so that you can try to get somebody to pay you down the line to remove that memorandum. And we explain this to the sellers and they still take those other offers. And then they still call us back and go, you were right. And we go, guess what? Here's the memorandum on the cloud on your title.
Yeah, you're screwed. Yeah. I mean, here's what I would say about this. Part of this, Gallon, is you have to do a better job creating trust and confidence in your sellers. Because people who have a high backdoor rate or whatever, some of that is because you're not building enough trust with your sellers. And so therefore they're thinking, maybe I should go with this other guy.
Yep.
And this is why, Brent and I both believe strongly in a appointment model, a face-to-face model in our business. We feel that you can create a connection, you can create rapport. Very rarely do I win deals because of price. There's always somebody willing to pay more, but I don't have a lot of backdooring going on because I've done a good enough job that the seller has no reason to shop me after signing the contract. They feel really good about what they're doing. I'm solving their problem and they have confidence in that. I've got the trust. So I would reevaluate what you're doing and I would do a much more effort in maintaining that relationship after the contract before closing. Like, 100%. Are you communicating with that seller? Are you reassuring them? This is scary. Are you constantly talking to them about, here's the next thing that's going to happen. Here's the next thing that's going to happen. That's going to go a long way to prevent some of this from happening.
I love this. Look at some of these responses here, Jerry. This is fantastic. We have such a great audience. We have the world's greatest audience. All about Tay. I'm networking with private money lenders and I got my real estate license. I'm working on building my knowledge base and how to use it appropriately, being more strategic while adding credibility. Look at Dimitri Van Camp crushing. I'm closing on more than half my deals now as an adaptation to the changes. And when I assign, I always have the cash ready to close if the buyer backs out. Woo, yeah. This is great stuff, guys.
Brent, do you know what Jeff Watson said to do if you file a memorandum?
What?
He said, if you want to file a memorandum, take the money in the purchase agreement that you agreed to and your contract and your earnest money, put all of that in escrow, the money to buy it in escrow. No one can question now that you as the buyer have the intent to buy and you've done everything on your end to buy.
Yep.
Otherwise, he said, don't do it. It's just, you're not going to win.
Awesome. John, I'm definitely double closing on deals where my assignment is almost the size of the purchase price. Yep. I mean, that must be, geez.
Low income or big assignments.
Yeah. Those are, that could be one of two ways there. Yeah, absolutely incredible, guys. Just understand, it's not that you can't help people that are going through foreclosure. You just have to be really, really careful the way that you position it. Because there's a lot of training out there, guys. I've seen it for 20 years where they're like, I am going to be your resource. I'm going to be your consultant. I'm going to be, give you all these options when you're just trying to lead them down the path of you buying the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's deceptive.
So if you're going to do those things, then actually do those things. Actually help them. If they're like, I don't know who to call to get a loan modification, then, have them talk to somebody that at the bank. Call your bank.
Yeah.
It's got to be on your statement somewhere. Call the bank. Call them. Have a conversation.
If you say, Brent, If you say to a seller in pre-foreclosure, my first priority is to save your home and you stay in the home, then you better show that 8 out of your last deals, you saved their home and they stayed in the home. If you're saying that's your first priority, you better have a history of that. If you don't, then you're being deceptive.
Here's the other thing, Jerry. Here's the other thing that's really interesting, because this is something that we started doing. I hadn't sent out direct mail in a long time, but we started sending out the checks, right? The checks that have a certain percentage of Zillow. It's very common. We have the money to do it. It's not like, we're faking it, that type of thing. But I'm a little bit nervous about even that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That from my perspective. The other thing is, and I'll talk to an attorney about it. But the other thing is, they were talking about, they were leaving leave behinds that were like fake FedEx or USPS stickers.
They have fake drivers.
Because we have a package for you. Call us.
Yeah. They were also saying
they would deliver. They would go with a packet to, and I've known people have done this. They would bring a packet of all of the notice of default and the trustee sale notice with, all their information on, options and all these other things to the house. That was the end.
Yeah.
Right. And this has been taught forever. This has been taught forever. Oh, we're working with your bank. Call us.
Yeah, they did that. We're working with your lender. Yeah. Lie.
Guys,
here's
because it works doesn't mean
you should do it.
Listen, everything times 0 is 0. Everything times 0 is 0. If you're lying and you build a business based on lying, you're going to lose everything.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah.
Everything times 0 is 0.
It'll catch up.
So just go. I was taught by Tom Kroll, and Tom Kroll knew nothing about real estate. Literally nothing. I'd been in real estate 8 years longer than Tom. Tom knew nothing, but Tom told everybody he knew nothing. Tom told him, I'm not even buying this house. I'm going to take this to my friend that buys houses, and he's going to pay me for bringing this purchase agreement to him. And they're like, great. And that's how he did his first,
they didn't care.
Unbelievable amount of deals. And so you don't have to be nervous to be honest. Let that sink in. Just go there, be excited to help people out, be excited to give them an offer. If they want the big time buyer that has all the money in the bank and they want to work with that person, they're not going to work with you anyway.
Right.
Don't fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
That's literally fraud.
Yeah.
That's literally fraud.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so we're truth tellers, truth seekers. And that's the conversation that you have.
Here's
being proactive. That doesn't stop you from finding opportunities.
Yeah, I think here's one change that people could make right now, Brent, is what happens is I think a lot of newer investors, they get in a situation where they don't know if they've got a good deal. They're like, 100 I know is a great deal, but the seller's at 115. Maybe I can sell it for 120, 125. I don't know. What should I do? Should I sign at 115? And then what happens is you get it at 115, then you find out you can't move it, and then you back out of the contract. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. So a different way to approach that I recommend is an option agreement instead of a purchase and sale agreement. And here's why. An option agreement says you as the buyer have an option to buy, but the seller is obligated to not sell it to anyone else during the option period. And there has to be consideration. So an option fee that the seller would keep, right? So $1,000, $100, whatever. So then what you're saying in essence is you're saying, look, I don't know if I can make 115 work. Give me 30 days. I'll give you a little bit of money. I'm going to go see if I can make this work. If I can, I'll exercise the option, perform on the contract, and buy it. If I can't, no harm, no foul. There's no expectations that I'm going to close. You can now sell it to somebody else. It's a way cleaner document and contract because right out of the gate, you're not committing anything. You're just having a window of time to see if you can do the deal.
Yep. And listen, I think that I love that. That's how I always thought these deals worked. in the past when I was like kind of growing up and going to seminars and everything, everybody was talking about options. And it's really interesting, Jerry. I think this is the reason why real estate agents hate us on some level, is because they have to play within a certain amount of rules. And we just go out there and willy-nilly just do whatever the hell we want. And then they're like, wait a second, these guys are getting paid how much to be willy-nilly out there, just doing whatever they want, just lying to property owners with no repercussions, no oversight, none of that. And then, the entrepreneur in us is like, less regulations, less licensing, less all that stuff. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, but then you have these bad apples that are going to inevitably like clamp down big time from a consumer fraud protection. What is going on there? And then everybody will have to get licenses, and everybody's going to have to disclose, and there's going to be 15, 30 pages of disclosures, which is fine. You know what I mean? But it'll be, that's why I see there's a bad, light when it comes to being a wholesaler, when you're reaching out to people, agents, telling them that you want to buy some properties. And the first thing that they're trained to do is, wait, are you a wholesaler?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What questions do people have, Brent, around any of this? What questions you guys have? What are your concerns? Where are you stuck?
Yeah. Come on in, Matt. Come on up. Matt Justice, everybody.
So I have a couple questions.
Get right on the mic.
So with this lawsuit that's going on now, I read the document. I don't really know how lawsuits work. Like, I've never been in a lawsuit. Right. So can they go and start like adding information? Like, can they go and like look at all the settlement statements from these deals and see that other wholesalers sold these deals, now include those other wholesalers that sold the deals and put them in this lawsuit?
Jerry?
I know you guys aren't lawyers or anything.
Well,
I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, they named quite a few entities and people. They named salespeople, door knockers. I mean, they named about everybody they could find that were involved. It's somewhat involved in this whole enterprise. So, I think they've exhausted everybody they want to include in the lawsuit. Now it's up to everybody to defend themselves. And what's going to happen is they're going to go through discovery. The defendants are going to lawyer up, and there's going to go back and forth. They might fight about all of that for a long time. At some point, it might go, if they don't settle or anything, it might go to a court, and then it's going to be a lot of back and forth and a lot of trying to prove their case. The defendants trying to defend their situation. I mean, it's going to be a circus. I think it would be the most fascinating thing to be sitting in that courtroom if and when that goes down, because it's going to be wild, all the stuff that's going on and they're doing, but what's your concern there? Your concern is you wholesale the deal and maybe you get sucked in?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Those names look extremely familiar, and I'm like, man, I might have sold some of their properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so, because what they're really going after, nowhere in there were the buyers named that bought their deals. I mean, they're really focusing on what these guys were doing with sellers. And so what you're talking about is you found your own deal with, a seller, you transacted, you brought them the deal and they were the buyer. Is that what you're concerned about?
No, that like they contracted the deal. I sold the deal to the buyer. Like, I dispoed the deal.
Oh, you dispoed their deal.
Their names. I mean, if anything, it would have been years ago. So because now I started keeping track of literally everything. Like, this would have been when I first started, but their names look extremely familiar. And that's my business model, is I sell other wholesalers deals. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I can get a deal from someone, but there could still be two other assignments in front of it. And I don't know who exactly it came from. Yeah.
I mean, I've been named in lawsuits just because I was party to the transaction and had to spend thousands, tens of thousands, in one case over $100,000 just defending myself. Eventually I was waived from the thing. But when you get named in a lawsuit, you got to lawyer up and defend yourself now, whether you did anything wrong or not. So, hopefully no.
No, yeah, that's why I was just asking. Like, I don't know if they have all the information they need, or like if all of a sudden they can just start adding things.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that works. If I think if they discover more stuff, then they'll try to include that in the suit. If they feel like they've got some more dirt on these guys, I bet you they can.
It has it in there, Jerry. It talks about company yellow and company brown and company and 1 or to 100 people. So I think in the discovery, I think they're looking for their actual organization. And remember, this is a fraud and racketeering case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Man, I just don't want to be involved. I don't want to be involved in any of it, you know? And like, I feel like I run my business off of transparency too. Like if I ever get a deal direct to seller or direct to agent, like we totally disclose that, hey, our intent is to flip, rent, lease, or assign this property for a profit. And that classifies us as a wholesale buyer.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I got dragged into a lawsuit where we wholesaled a sub 2. The end buyer defaulted. The original seller sued and named us in the lawsuit just because we were party to the transaction, and we had to defend ourselves. We got removed eventually, but like that happens.
Yeah, and so that also brought me to my second question then, because I saw that they mentioned sub 2 FHA deals on this.
Three of their cases mentioned subject to. Florida came out with a headline that called this a subject to thing. It's not a subject to thing. This isn't really anything. This isn't a assignment thing, a subject to thing. They just happen to be doing those types of transactions in their fraud scheme that they talked about. But this is not a sub 2 issue here.
Right, but they were purchasing properties subject to with FHA loans, which no title companies, at least here in Arizona, don't do that. So you have to go and self-perform on those. So is that something that you should probably stay away from?
I would.
Yeah. I've done like 10 of them.
Yeah, I don't. We just don't run across them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we target properties that the people that reach out to us are the people that just want to sell it. They just want to be done and sell it for cash. So we focus on that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I told my team today after reading the lawsuit, I don't really know what's kind of going on, especially with FHA sub 2 deals, because that's kind of like a gray area. And so I told my team today, like, we're not doing any more of these. Like, if we're doing any creative finance deals right now, it has to be seller finance.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Next week when Pace is on, ask him. I don't know. I mean, he's the expert. Right. He knows.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it. Yeah, I mean, Pace will have an opinion for sure. I would definitely hear what he has to say. But me personally, we were wholesaling a lot of sub 2 deals, and I've really dialed that back. I'm really careful now on those because of the lawsuit that happened, and it makes sense because listen, when you assign that deal to your end buyer, that seller never goes away because they're still on the liability. So if something goes down wrong after the fact, it's easy for a lawyer to come in and say, okay, let's name the title company, let's name the wholesaler, let's name the real estate agent, let's name everybody part of the transaction and let them all sort it out after the fact. It's easy to add a name to a lawsuit. So I just don't want to be part of that. I don't want that to happen to me. So we're very careful about who we assign a sub 2 deal to.
Yeah, no, we put a process in place for our sub 2 deals, just because it's like we had a big scare happen on an FHA deal where a buyer stopped making payments. We ended up getting him back on track, making payments and everything. But I was getting really nervous, and so now we really vet our buyers. We're like, yo, is this your first one? Yep. If not, send us your rental portfolio. We need to make sure that your properties are performing, that you have the cash, because you don't know. I mean, if you go and buy a rental property, I bought one from you a couple months ago and it's been vacant for 4 months, but it's luckily I have the reserves to be able to hold on to it and wait for it to get filled. Whereas other people, they might be getting into this and all of a sudden now they don't have the reserves and they're like, holy crap, I can't make these payments anymore. Yeah. And now they almost have no liability on it. And now it's all the seller's the one that gets screwed at the end of the day.
Yeah. So one of our rules is if if our buyer is borrowing the entry fee from PML, we won't do it because they're over leveraged and there's a high chance that if crap hits the fan, they're just going to go dark or hand it back to the seller. Right. So that's like one of our rules.
Yeah, no, that's a great rule. I'll implement that too.
Yep.
Cool.
Good.
That was pretty much all the questions I had. Thank you.
Yeah. Sergio. So Brent, do you disclose to every seller that you are not the buyer? Do you have your paperwork say you can assign it? Yeah, you have to disclose it here, Sergio, in Arizona. You have to disclose it. And the people that aren't disclosing in Arizona are bananas. I mean, that was like, we were thinking it was going to be like, hey, you need to get a license. You need to do these disclosures. You need to use the these type of agreements, all that type of thing. They're like, you have to disclose if you are a wholesale buyer. Now we have the ability to close. So we close on a bunch and resell them and assign a bunch. So we have it all disclosed in there for sure. We haven't disclosed that we're we even put it in there, Jerry, that and maybe you use the same language that may or may not be at current market value, that we're selling this for a profit, that, as much as you can be like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? We do that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at
that's what keeps people happy and keeps people, listen, if you disclose and you're transparent, people work with you.
In my contracts, we have an agency disclosure, we have a profit disclosure, we have an assignment disclosure. Like I disclose. I disclose everything to sellers.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's interesting, Jerry, is guys, really be careful. And this might sound self-serving to Jerry and I, but be really careful where you're learning how to do this business from. Because if you set it up wrong, I mean, these transactions can be pulled back for a long time.
Yeah. They can go back. I mean? And go back to your history.
If your goal, which I think everybody is to do a lot of business and to be really successful and to find great opportunities and to change the financial path of your family, everything times 0 is 0. So
that's why, Brent,
make sure you're not saying things that you're lying.
That's why this attitude of like, well, okay, they passed a regulation in my state. What's the workaround? That's the first thing I see the chats blowing up on Facebook. What's the workaround? What do you mean? You're going to build a business on workarounds? Like, dude, are you here to just make a buck or are you here to build a business? If you're here to build a business, don't find the workaround. But how do you operate with your head held high without looking over your shoulder every day, without where you can hit your pillow at night and sleep good because you know you're doing the right thing? That's what I want to do. Not what's the workaround,
Yeah, but I remember, listen, Jerry, I remember there was coaching programs and maybe these guys went through it. Maybe they went to the seminar that was teaching about being a foreclosure specialist, being a foreclosure consultant, and with all the material and all the scripts and all the presentation material on how to go in there and lie.
Yeah.
So just be really, really, really careful, guys. You could do this business without having to take the shortcuts, because that's what these guys did. They made every lead profitable. That's why they made so much money, and we knew about it. Everybody knew about these guys. I was told about these guys. I've never met them, never been around them, but I was told about some of these jokers 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I was like, what are they doing? That's crazy. Just because you can make money from a transaction doesn't mean that they're not going to try to, pull it back and get that money back at some point. And then it's just a headache. I mean, what a nightmare. What a nightmare scenario. So just learn the right way. Be very, very careful who you learn from. People that are really good at convincing sellers to sell their house, people that are really good at blowing up really fast and then coaching all these things. Sometimes they don't understand that you can't just say whatever you want to convince somebody to sell their house to you or for whatever price that you're trying to negotiate it. And sometime, and that's why, Jerry, this has been a revolving door in our industry of people that come in and they've got really great strategies that nobody else has heard of, and then they're gone in 2 to 3 years. You know why?
Yeah.
Because litigation chases them out. It's the truth.
Yep.
It's the truth. And
I love this comment by J. Taryn Moore. I think you say it. Pull that one up, Brent. Can you see that?
Jatarin? Yeah, Jatarin's amazing.
The last deal I closed, the property owners knew I wasn't purchasing the deal. They knew how much my assignment fee was, and they also knew who the actual buyer was because I introduced them. Yeah, like it's not as scary as you think, guys.
Jatarin's amazing, and an amazing follow on social media. Make sure that you guys check her out.
Awesome.
But
Yeah. I put a link in the chat, guys, of a video I did where I go through all of the disclosures that you should have, whether your state mandates it or not. I think you guys should all watch that video. I break it down and go through them in detail. I think that'd be really helpful for you guys that want to do this on the up and up.
Awesome. Let's get to some other questions. What's your thoughts on PPL versus cold calling, Jerry?
Well, I definitely have thoughts on this. Cold calling is going to be a longer cash conversion cycle. You're looking at 90 days to 6 months to convert those leads. Lots of follow-up. It's going to be a lot of brain damage because you're going to have to go through a massive list to try to find those buyers in there. It's an outbound method, so you're reaching out to them. Typically, you have smaller assignment fees, but it's inexpensive. The trade-off is it's fairly inexpensive to get a list, skip trace it, hire a cold caller. That's all very inexpensive. So you're trading the inexpensive for a lot more work and a lot longer of a cash conversion cycle, meaning that you talk to the seller today, you don't close with that seller for 6 months because you got to do a lot of follow-up until they're ready. PPL falls in that same category, I think, as PPC, which is the very high intent sellers is the idea there. They're inbounding. They're filling out a form, usually online. They're saying, I desperately need to sell my house. So by nature of their situation, you tend to get much higher motivated sellers, higher quality leads. You get bigger fees. You close them a lot faster. The trade-off is they're much more expensive.
Yeah, what I would say is inbound versus outbound, Michael.
Yeah.
Outbound, you're trading your time, your efforts. You're building your skills. It's a very highly skilled base, and you very profitable, right? But typically it's 1 to 70 leads. Now it's going to be less if you don't hire a VA. If you hire a VA to do it, it's about 1 in 70 leads to get a deal. Okay. And it costs around $2,000 if you're hiring VAs and the list and the dialer and all that per deal. PPL, you've got a couple options. PPL, you can get really inexpensive leads that are on the outskirts. And if you understand and learn how to do novations, it's a wonderful strategy. Wonderful strategy. Novations are really interesting. If you're in town, if you want to do the in-town, then the leads are going to be way more expensive. I would put them somewhere between $200 and $300 in most major markets. But remember the difference with PPL, and this might be an interesting thing for you, Jerry, but just digging around, for most PPL companies, the intent-based searches is only about 20% of the leads. The other leads come from YouTube. They're actually doing cold calls, SMS texting through VAs, Facebook ads, and what is called the pool. And the pool is all the PPL companies get together. They don't have clients in every area. So if they generate a lead that they don't have somebody for, they'll put it out to the other companies, which is great. And I think it's smart. And I think it's a wonderful strategy to get good opportunities into the hands of us investors. PPC is all intent. It's all people searching to sell their house. It's all intent. That's the difference. And once you build this up, that's why I went to PPC. That's why I have a PPC agency, is because this is the top of the pyramid. When people go, I want to sell my house now, it's like 1 in 15 is a deal as opposed to 1 in 70. and PPL's somewhere around there. You can get credits and refunds with PPL if the properties are listed, if the properties are already under contract, if it's just a fake, lead, all those things you can get a credit back, which is great. So I think you start here as a gateway to get to PPC. But again, PPL outskirts, you're probably looking at $1,000 to $2,000 a deal. In town, you're probably looking $2,000 to $4,000 a deal for PPL. So just remember that if you don't have that money, then be proactive. Reach out to the property owners, see if they would consider an offer on their property, and be.
Yeah, Brent, you did an awesome video. We did 2 videos that I just aired on my YouTube channel. You guys should go watch those because Brent does a phenomenal job breaking down what you just said there. And one thing that really stuck with me, Brent, which really simplifies this, is as a general rule, if you take PPL and PPC, if you spend about $300 per lead for the good leads, the metro leads, and in most markets, about $300 per lead, and you can close 1 in 20, that's about a $6,000 spend per contract. Now, if you get better, maybe you get to 1 in 15. If you've got more exit strategies like creative innovations and things, you can get to 1 in 10. But as a general rule, it's going to take about 20 of those, spending about $300 on average per lead, about $6,000. And so for a lot of people, Brent, the question is, it's not PPC or it's not cold calling or PPL. I think a bigger question is, what's your marketing budget and what's your sales process? Because if you have the budget, you should be doing PPC and PPL over cold calling because your life is just going to be so much better. Right?
Yeah. And if you're at that point, I would say if you're in a smaller market, you're going to spend minimum $5,000 a month. If you're in a bigger market, it's $7,500 a month. And if you're interested in that, talk2people.com. Check it out. We work with Jerry. We work with incredible people. All the Joe Homebuyer franchises. We're doing amazing things. It's really, really robust. And I've got the best people. They're in town. They're not like VAs somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and they don't understand real estate. These are all real estate guys that are combined with Google, and they really understand Google ads. It's awesome. And it's going to change marketing, in my opinion. The other thing, Jerry, interestingly enough, I was on the phone 2 hours today with my disposition manager, Jeremy, and we were looking at our some like 20 deals last year that were good size deals. And then we went and saw what they sold for. And we did some calculations based on average price per square foot, based on the hold time, how much they spent in private money. We did it with, commissions and closing costs and all that. We would have made, just from 20 deals that we looked at, we would have made an extra $1 million if we would have flipped them, if we would have fixed them and flipped them. Yeah. I'm going to start flipping. And I hate to say it, Jerry. I hate to say it. I am, but it's just one, it's going to be more profitable. And two, I think that if you do big deals direct to consumer and you assign them, I think that could look bad. The really, 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 really big ones, eventually. And I texted you this, Jerry, and I'll just be transparent to the audience. You get a property, you fix and flip it, you make 150 grand. They give you a TV show. You know what I'm saying? You get a deal that you lock up, you assign it and make 150 grand. And you're a
scammer. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I would say, Brent,
I mean?
you and I just talked about this, but I like to flip. But I think for most people, just have some really good parameters, some guardrails there. Make sure you're doing a cosmetic. Don't get into the crazy heavy stuff, gut jobs, redesigns, additions. Stay away from that stuff. Cosmetic, surface only, and make sure that you're budgeting for a really healthy profit. I call this lose to win. If you blow it and you do everything wrong and you go over budget and it sells for less than you thought, and you make 40 instead of 80, you can live with that, right? But I see people going in to make 20, 25, and they lose 20. Yeah. That's where you want to be careful with flipping.
Guys, Jerry says it in front of every group, 70% minus repairs, no exceptions.
If you're the buyer, if you're doing it. Yeah.
If you're doing the deal. And Patrick, I know. I like, it drives me crazy. I don't like any part of the flipping process. I don't. I really don't. I don't like the thought of people breaking in and stealing the new appliances. I don't like the thought of contractors like taking too long. I don't like the thought of getting permits and that whole process. Like I like the action. You know what I mean? But
and you don't want to just take down it all, like all of it, buy everything and just resell it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might be the move, Jerry. That might be what we do. But on the flip side, I looked at this, and these flips were not elaborate flips.
Yeah.
These were very quick, very easy, very good, a lot of good quality, some terrible quality, some awful quality, selling for ridiculous prices. You know what I mean? If I'm like, okay, you can either spend more money in marketing and get more deals and assign them and build your business that way, or you could do the same amount of marketing and squeeze out an extra couple $1 million from going all the way through it. And there's a tremendous amount more risk, more heartburn, more headache. I mean, assignments are the greatest thing of all time. Yeah. I mean, they're the greatest. But to really get the most out of it, and my team is always amped up to do it. They love the idea. Yeah. And to be your own cash buyer has some kind of peace of mind. You know what I mean? When you take your own projects, you got it in your own hands, you're using your own money, and we have plenty to be able to do it, a little bit here and there until we ramp it up and see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean,
I think if you're just sorry, Jerry. I think if you're just starting out, I think that you should understand this process first.
Yeah.
I think you should really stay focused until you get to the point where you can almost pull yourself completely out of the business before you start doing some flips, or you only flip the properties that are absolute grand slam home runs. No doubt about it. If the economic world melted, then you'd still be fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a couple questions here around that formula. So guys, the 70% formula means that you want to be all in to the deal at 70% of the ARV. That means you're going to basically carve out 30% right off the top. And what's the 30%? Well, about 8 to 9% of that is closing fees and commissions. About 5 to 6% of that is carrying cost or cost of financing, borrowing the money to do the deal. That's 15%. The other 15% is profit. So I like to go into a deal with a 15% profit margin. And that's a good, healthy profit. I keep that margin even when I go up in the luxury, because the higher the risk, the more money, the more profit, right? So I don't shrink that down as I get bigger, and stay away from low income. Don't flip $100,000 houses where you're buying them for 50 and putting 25 in. You're not going to make any money. That's ridiculous. Don't do that. Really try to hit the 6 figures. I look at flipping and I'm like, if I'm going to fix and flip, I better make $100,000 or more for my headache.
Why not? And I see this. Other wholesalers I've talked to in my market is 82%, 84% minus repair. Same here.
That's fine. Wholesale to those guys. Wholesale to those guys. But when you flip, don't you dare do 82 to 84%. Just don't.
It's so
you're
smart.
Gonna regret.
Well, because
you're gonna get in trouble.
The tide always goes out. And right now, I mean, there's 5 months of inventory everywhere. I mean, more in other areas, but like it's the market is very stagnant. So you got to be the best price, best looking, best smelling, have everything buttoned up, best agent working for you, all those things to be able to get it done right now and to get it done fast. Because nothing is worse than a house rotting on the market, Jerry.
Oh.
Nothing. Gets to like 90 days, you're like, oh my God, I hate this.
I just had one, Brent, where in Michigan, we put it up, got a ton of action, accepted a full price offer, praised for $20,000 less.
Yeah.
Buyer really wanted it, so we dropped that lender, went to a new lender, got a new appraisal, conventional, 20,000 again, 20,000 under. We provided comps and everything. I got the buyer to agree to split the difference and come up and pay the extra 10, but I lost 10 grand just because. Yeah. 10 grand, just like that, because it wouldn't appraise.
Yeah.
Like that's the stuff you deal with when you flip.
Start to finish from the time that you bought that or put that property under contract, bought it, and then fix it up and then put it out there to sell again. It's probably, 3-6 months as opposed to
every day chewing into your profit. Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for participating in this. If you have anybody that is in our industry, anybody that you love and respect, make sure you share this episode with them because it's going to be really, really, really important for people to understand how the rest of the world views us, especially the rest of the world that wants to, really tighten up our processes and tighten up what's going on. And really nothing crazy. Like, don't lie. That should be obvious, but sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we're trained wrong. Sometimes we have assumptions of what we can say and not say and get things done. Just because you can say it doesn't mean that you should. Be a truth teller, be a truth seeker. You can make so much more money. And remember, success is a good night's sleep. That's the definition of success. And you need to be able to do that. Nothing's going to keep you up more than getting dragged into a lawsuit.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah. So
awesome. Sure. Love you, Brent. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you guys. We love you guys. We'll see you next week on Wholesale Hotline. We are out.
Or just say squat up.
So squat up and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
So squat up and enjoy the show.
What are you doing?
I didn't say nothing.
Why?
I don't know.
Okay.
So squat up and enjoy the show.
Cool. I think we should use the one where Jamil doesn't say anything.